Hello and welcome to Off the Tangent podcast with me, Zak Bream. Today I have a special guest. He has joined me from London, and we're going to discuss different things today, from economics to his background in sports and finance. So welcome to the podcast, Charles Kent.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, Zach. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So I think to get things started, we like to kind of introduce people and get a sense of your background and sort of where you came from. So do you want to start by telling me like what your parents did when you were young and like where you yourself grew up?
Yeah. We'll get straight into it. I definitely came from very, let's say, privileged upbringing. My parents both worked in the finance sector for 30 years. Definitely with daddy, he was an investment banker for a long time. He's worked at all the major investment banks. So I definitely had a very lucky childhood. Yeah, I grew up in the countryside as well, which is always nice. Grew up in Cambridge. It was a lovely place to be, just outside, growing up on a farm. It's really nice. But yeah, definitely had very nice upbringing, to say the least. Was lucky enough, me and my sisters, to attend private school, attended boarding school from the age of, I think they shipped me off at 13 years old. But yeah, no, definitely a very nice childhood to have. It's very full on as well. All my sisters, my parents, who all played sport like crazy. I remember, particularly when I was at prep school in Cambridge, I remember because my sisters, one was a horse riding, I was gymnast, and I played all three: rugby, hockey, cricket. I remember every single day after school, there was always some sporting activity going on. So we never get home till like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night because there's always something going on. So it's very full on. But no, I had a very like nice upbringing on that side of things. Like, I was lucky enough to attend private school, as I said, boarding school. I was lucky enough to go to school in Cape Town as well for a little bit. So yeah, very lucky in that sense, trying to pull my childhood into my professional career now.
Yeah.
I very much enjoyed it. Very lucky to have it as well.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm quite curious into getting into the boarding school because I think you're the first person I've ever met that's actually went to boarding school. So I'm curious about that. Um, so to me, from the outside perspective, a boarding school, I don't know if I would ever send my kids there, just because to me it seems like sending your kids away from the parents for, like, as you said, you were there for five
Yeah,
years, a long time. I feel like it must be difficult. Was it hard for you when you went when you were 13? Like, do you remember it being difficult?
Oh yeah, it was very difficult. The reason why is so the prep school I was at, we were a feeder school for a massive school in Cambridge called the Lees. And so basically everybody in my year then, apart from two of us, went to the Lees. And the Lees is boarding and day school. Most people live in Cambridge, so it's a day school. But it was myself and another guy. We were the only two blokes to go to boarding school. So I remember rocking up there, and I was in year nine. The school I was at was called Framlingham. It's where Ed Sheeran's from. It's quite a farming boarding school. It's quite famous. But with the dorms in year nine, it's you and then everybody else in your year group, so about 10 other people. So I remember rocking up on the first day, not knowing anybody, and just
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, I've got to sleep with these guys for the next year in this massive dorm. But like, people have different experiences of boarding school. For me, I was really lucky because it all depends on the boarding house you go into. Because for me, it was basically 5 years. It was like a 5 year sleepover with your best mates, and we're
Yeah.
still mates. With me, for example, with five or six of them now, I go and see them most weekends. It's great fun. And I feel, I mean, it's what you touched on, like, would you send your kids there or not? I feel when it comes to that side of education, obviously education in general is incredibly important, but it's also the experiences that you gain. So a lot of these boarding private schools were very heavy on sports. So the school I went to, we were the best hockey school in the country, and hockey was a big sport for me at the time. So it's just the opportunities you get. I mean, I don't, apart from one day during the week, we would be training, playing sport every single day. And that was quite key for me because, some people, for example, like you finish school, you go home and just chill. Like, that's nice. But for me, like, just playing sport like constantly, it was great fun. As I mentioned, it's just basically a massive sleepover for 5 years. I mean, I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. But it all depends what boarding house you go into. Some people have a bad one, they have a bad experience, which one of my best mates who wasn't in my boarding house had. And then there's me on the flip side who really enjoyed it. But yeah, no, I had a great time there.
Do you think you were like prepared as a child to go there? Do you think your parents always told you like, oh, you're gonna go to boarding school when you're 13, or was it suddenly like you hit 13 years old and there you're going to boarding school? What was it like?
It's a great question. I mean, my parents didn't come from a very privileged upbringing. They both stay educated. My mum didn't go to uni, dad went to uni, but they never experienced it. But then I think it's just the upbringing we had. All my sisters and I were very lucky to attend private school from a very young age. It was very much the path, let's say, of like, yeah, we'll attend it. 13, they gave me the option, but if you're very big into your sport, which I was at that age, and throughout school, you basically need to attend a boarding school, wherever that is in the country, just to get that sporting experience. Yeah, that's really where we stood. It's very much I knew that was the path I would go down. My sister was slightly different. They didn't want to attend boarding school. They wanted to stay in Cambridge. That's up to them. My youngest one, Lexi, she got the opportunity to go for upper sixth. But, it's also a lot of stress on the parents as well, sending the kid away at 13 years old, you don't know what it's going to get up to.
Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed it. It was good fun.
Yeah, I think that from the sounds of it, it sounds like your parents did a good balance where you went when you're 13 years old. Because oftentimes you'll see about families like their kids will be 5 and they're just shipping them
Yeah.
off to boarding school and then they won't see them. And it's almost like in those circumstances, it's almost like why does a parent even have a kid at that point? It seems like
Yeah, I know, I know. There was one guy in one of the boarding houses. He's been at boarding school since he was 6 years old. His parents from Zimbabwe, and he was there at boarding school from 6 years old. Like, it's just absolutely, it's outrageous. I couldn't think of that. Like, but yeah,
do you
mental.
think that in terms of like because I mentioned how like the lack of parent presence when you go to boarding school, do you
Mm.
think that going to a boarding school when you are like 6 years old like stunts emotional growth, or do you think that do you think that boarding schools provide a substitute for parenting?
I know where you're coming from. Let's paint this picture. So when you go into a boarding school, you have your housemaster, who's pretty much your dad. Then you have your matron, which is like your mum, and they look after you very well. When you're boarding school with that guy, I'll get the example from six, it definitely builds a new personality in you, I want to say. For example, like when you're at school and you get up to upper sixth, let's say you didn't go to boarding school, and then you go to university, it's a massive shock for people being living away from home from the first time. For us, it's not. It's almost like they're preparing you for the real world in that sense, like moving on to uni. But it's definitely is like changes your personality, but like in my opinion, for the better because you get to know like what's like living by yourself, almost to an extent like caring for yourself as well on that side of things. But you're still very much like regimented in terms of like your housemaster's your dad, your matron's your mum, like they look after you and that side of things. They're always there for a chat. They're not going to let you just rot away in a corner and never speak to you ever again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and do
that's
you think after you leave boarding school you still talk to them, or is it more like
oh
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you do?
It was only a month ago we had a reunion. So a lot of these boarding schools they have societies after you leave. So normally they're called like old. Then the boarding school name. So for us it's Old Framlinghamians, and then for other schools it'd be old something or other. And basically it's just meeting up with under 30s who attended from 2014 to 2024, and like go for a drink in the city, get chatting. You also have like old sporting events. So I'm going to play in the old hockey match with the old boys versus the current pupils there, which would be
Yeah,
interesting.
that'll be fun.
But yeah, we have that even in the cricket season. You have the old boys play against the teachers and the pupils once a year. Like it's always keeping you in the loop and like keeping you coming back, which is nice, which I like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I suppose in the sense it's not a full replacement, but I imagine like the sense of community is a strong thing. And if you, as you're saying, like at boarding school, if they provide such a strong sense of community while you're there and after you leave, then it's almost like it can play a big role in your life in supporting emotional development and like staying. That's good. So you mentioned as well that you went to South Africa. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go on exchange there. It was just after GCSEs. So I went to Cape Town in a school called Bishops. Well, at the time, they were the best rugby school in South Africa. And sport in South Africa to England in terms of schools is very different. In South Africa, there's schoolboy rugby games, hockey games, cricket games. They're broadcast on live TV. You get like 10,000 people watching live. It's like a completely different atmosphere. But then you go to like first team rugby in the UK with schools, you get an old man and his dog drinking drinking a flask, but like that. But no, in South Africa, it was a massive culture shock. The reason for that, I was very lucky as well. The guys who I live with, they're all professional rugby players now. One of them plays for South Africa. And the other guys, like they're all pro rugby players. I'm still best mates with them at the moment. But it was a very culture shock because going there, the first thing you do getting off the plane is that you get into your taxi and you drive to where you're going. The first thing that you see is all the townships,
Yeah.
and it's a massive wake up. Like Jesus, like this stuff actually is real.
Yeah, yeah.
It really shocked me, like a 16-year-old kid thinking like, oh, the world's perfect or whatever, there's nothing wrong. And you see that, you're like, wow, like this is insane. But like in terms of school, it's a completely different environment. So when it came to your timetable, let's say, boarding school in England, you'll wake up at 7:30, go to breakfast at 8, you have roll call 8:45, then lessons. In South Africa, you're up at 5:30 in the morning. You have a matric, which is year 13. They come, they ring the bell. You basically have 5 minutes to stand up, make your bed, clean your area, make sure your shoes are polished, everything's, neat and tidy. It's very military in that sense. You go down, have breakfast, and it's a very Christian school as well. So you go and have chapel every morning. So you enter the chapel at 6:30, don't need till 7:30. Bit annoying, pain in the ass to be honest when you're half asleep. But yeah, but it's just the whole culture as well. It's completely different. It's such a very tight knit thing. And like, even when it came to the sport, watching the first team rugby, when watching the rugby guys play, like you have chants, you have flares going off, and this is schoolboy rugby for God's sake. It was just incredible, absolutely incredible. But yeah, beautiful country as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of. I mean, in America, they have like with the basketball so big in America or American football as well that you have even their high school and like I imagine their like sixth form, their equivalent there. It's all broadcasted the same where loads of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
into it follow it. It is quite surprising.
And they get paid a lot of money as well, especially in America when it comes to that.
Yeah, literally, and like I think the scholarships would be even more desirable if you know that. Imagine because imagine like we're like being 16 years old and already being famous for sports. Like it's just kind of
Yeah,
I do wonder how it affects them as individuals. Like I can imagine they probably get quite
yeah.
big headed about it, but
Well,
maybe in sports that's a good thing, being confident.
yeah, well, my best mate, one of my good mates in South Africa, he's now playing for the South Africa national side in rugby. And within 2 years, he's gone from being based this unknown name to now being sponsored by Adidas and Superdry. It's just like a massive shock for him. I mean, he's loving the attention, of course. Who wouldn't? But I know exactly where you're coming from. Honestly, it's like, oh, now I'm in the spotlight now. Got to behave when I go on a night out. But yeah, no, I totally agree.
100%. Then you also mentioned about the culture shock of getting to South Africa. I mean, a similar experience I've had is when me and my girlfriend went to India, and I'd seen videos and documentaries about India and all this stuff growing up, and I'd always wanted to go, but like nothing fully prepared me for what it was going to be like. Like we got to New Delhi, we got off the plane, and we took a train to like the city center in New Delhi. And as soon as we got out, I was just overwhelmed with the sounds, like just everything. There was so much going on. There were so many people. It felt like all the buildings were like falling onto each other, and it was just so shocking to me. Like I just wasn't mentally prepared
That's crazy. It's
for
crazy.
it. Yeah, and like it definitely does change you seeing that because it's as you said, like it goes from being something that you don't really believe is real, even if you've seen it on TV necessarily, to something that you can see it with your own eyes. This is happening, and it's like as you said, the world is not as perfect as it.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
So that's kind of like a little bit about your upbringing and background. I want to get into the finance side of things. So tell me about when you first started getting interested in finance.
That's a great question. I mean, as I said at the start, I mean, my whole family being in the finance world, particularly with my dad, he's been quite a big player in that world for some time now, but I never had any interest in it. It was funny actually. I went for drinks with my aunt about 2 weeks ago, and she also played a major role in it. And it was funny telling her, "Oh yeah, I've done my masters in finance. I've just gone to the finance realm, so to speak." And she goes, "Well, that's funny. You never gave a flying monkeys when you were a kid about it, and now all of a sudden you are." But yeah, I didn't care. The reason for that is I thought I was going to be a pro sportsman. That's like where I really wanted to go, no matter what element it was in. And then it was when I realized I wasn't going to become a pro sportsman. I was doing a degree that I just really didn't like. I was doing sports science. Like, they gave you good opportunities, but like you can't really do much with a sports science degree, to be honest. And so I went to dad and I was like, look, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, what should I do? How do I get into the finance world? He was like, well, go and understand the stock market and money, then come back to me. I watched the Netflix documentary on how the stock market works. It was about a half an hour documentary.
Yeah.
And instantly I was hooked on it. I was like, I can't believe I've gone, how old was I? I was 19 at the time. I can't believe I've gone 19 years without realizing how the world works.
Yeah, yeah,
And then, yeah, and then I learned how to day trade. And I thought it was a good thing to put on my CV at the time because I knew I was going to do my master's after finishing my undergrad. But I had no finance experience. Nobody was going to give you an internship doing sports science. It's just, you're not going to get it. So I thought if I do some day trading for a few years and put that on my CV, it'd be good. But the thing is, I did about 4 months of virtual day trading. So that's day trading with paper money, not real money. And then it was my second day. It was the Ukraine-Russian civil war when I was trading live money. And I went and asked my dad, this is about to start. Like, what should I do? This is interesting. He was like, well, what happened in 2014 when Russia first invaded Ukraine? And well, I was like, well, the Russian banks all got stopped. You couldn't trade them. They all went down like 50%. The market tanked like 10%, 20%. And I was like, well, here you go. Go and do that. So I did that. I shorted all the Russian banks until IG stops you from doing it. I then used way too much leverage on the Nasdaq, and I think within a week, I made close to like 160%. And then basically lived off the profits for a few months, and I kept trading. And
yeah,
that just give you an overview of the market at the time. The Nasdaq was priced at 16.6K. That dropped all the way to 12.5K in the space of 4 months, 3 months. And I basically rode that wave all the way down. And it's not skill. There was no skill involved whatsoever because statistically you can't make money day trading. I've learned that now since doing my masters. It's
yeah.
all luck. It was all but yeah, that's how I got into it. And then started doing my masters, did private equity, internship, and then now I worked in Gibraltar for a little bit as a broker, now working as a broker now at the moment in London. But yeah, enjoying it.
Yeah, that's good. I think day trading is an interesting one because I think, like yourself, you were 19, like when you first got into this, and like so many others around that age, I feel like we just, as you said, discover the stock market. Think, wow, there's so much money to be made. Like you see a stock that I don't know goes up in 50% in like 2 weeks, and you're like, wow, I want to make some money as well. And I think that's why crypto, especially, has become so prevalent is because, or especially in the day trading scene, is because you see these massive amount of volatility, and it's so enticing to young people who are trying to make money quickly, either because they don't understand fully the risks and that how unlikely they are to make money. You see a similar thing in options trading. So like um, they've actually had to in India at the moment they've had to put so much regulation on option trading because so many young people, like young Indian people, were just losing so much money in options trading because they were seeing influencers telling them how to do it and stuff, and they
They they
unfortunately.
were using in India and America, they were using single day expiry options, which allowed them to gain so much leverage. But due to the tight expiry and the Greeks, which I won't go into, is very complicated. I think the probability of you losing all your position was about 90%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So just
Explain simply to people what options trading is and what leverage is, because I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know what that means.
yeah. So uh, to give you an overview, so an option it's a derivative contract. So derivatives, the price is underlying from the value asset. So when it comes to derivatives, you have options, you have futures, and you have swaps. So when it comes to the option side of things, you're basically taking a stance that you have the obligation to basically purchase a put or a call. So a put is when you expect it to go down, and a call is when you expect it to rise. So you have the obligation, not the right, to obviously enter into those contracts. Now, the things with options that are very volatile, based on you can have 1 month option, 3 month options, 12-month options, but they're the most traded along with that. But derivatives trading in general is very complex, very regulated market. That's why in the UK, retail traders don't have really any access to option contracts compared to America, where they do. But in the UK, you have access to future contracts. So if I had um, if I had a tennis ball,
Yeah.
okay, and I expect this tennis ball will increase in value by 10% by the end of the year, I would enter into that futures contract, basically betting that the tennis ball will go up in value. But the thing is, when it comes to the leverage side of things, you're basically, as a retail trader, you're borrowing against the broker. In the real world, you're basically increasing like the value in your position. Retail traders have access up to 50 times leverage. In the real world, you might use 2%, 1.5. So I work in FX. The average option leverage that our clients might enter into is 1.5% or 1.25%. You're basically minimizing the risk on the downside, kind of, but you're also trying to expect the market to move up. So you try and leverage your position in that way. But yeah, it's very
Yeah.
complicated and everybody has different views on options. Me personally, I feel options many use as a hedging tool. So you're basically protecting your position, but there's so many people that enter it for speculation when you shouldn't. But yeah, it's my view on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not in finance. Like, I'm an engineer, but I do have an interest in it. I studied economics and do invest in stocks, but I don't do options or leveraging and that sort of stuff. My understanding of leveraging is almost that let's say you have £1,000. If you were to and you want to invest in a stock, if you were to leverage that, you're basically let's say you're leveraging like £10,000. You're saying you have £10,000 worth of that stock, even if you actually only have £1,000 of real money. And if it goes up 10%, you get 10% of that £10,000. Whereas if it goes down 10%, you lose 10% of that £10,000 as well. So it's like you can lose and gain a significant amount of more
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the retail world is you borrow that from the broker. If you look at hedge funds, though, so hedge funds that have billions asset under management, let's say they're entering, let's make maths easy. Let's say they enter into a fund and it's £1 million, okay? They could raise, let's say, 500K from investors. They will then go to the bank and borrow another 500K to put them up to 1 million. So that's them leveraging their position there, if that makes sense. But then they have to deal with the cost of borrowing and everything like that. But that's how it works in the hedge fund world. Investment bank world is a bit different because it's how you structure it. But yeah, no, you are right though in terms of what you said on that side of things. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on regulation? Because I think the thing is in finance and economics is I feel that you have this general principle that says the best way for stock market growth and countries to grow is to deregulate and almost remove the bureaucracy involved with making money. And in that sense, a country will grow and a company will grow. However, in doing that and removing regulation, you see things like cryptocurrency scams. You see things like people losing a lot of money, people doing option trading, leveraging, who have no experience whatsoever and losing a lot of money. What role do you think that regulation has in finance?
It's a great question. And it's one where people are very on either side of the fence. The reason for that, so in the UK environment with the FCA, we have red tape. It's very strict in what you can and can't do. Now, the reason for that, I've actually got his training jacket. You can see over there. So Nick Leeson, he was a Barings Bank trader. He was based out in Singapore, and he basically was using the bank's money to trade, which you can't do. And now Barings Bank, they had the Queen, they had the royal family all under their arm, the oldest bank in the UK. He basically lost the bank a couple billion and the bank went under. And that was due to basically no regulation there. So ever since then, they've been building regulations. Now, when it comes to regulation, you have Basel 1, 2, and 3. Each pillar is basically a new arm of the regulation. It's basically keeping on improving it. Now, when it comes to the UK side of things, it's very strict in what you can and can't do. So what that stops freedom, in my opinion. It stops people being able to go outside, let's say their risk appetite, or go outside and try something new. If it goes against the regulation or you're going to get flagged up, you won't be able to do it. So that stops freedom for traders. It stops freedom for salespeople on that side of things, which is something I disagree with, and I don't think that should be the case. It also stops economic activity, in my opinion. If you have such strict tension rules with this red tape that we have with the FCA and the UK environment, it will just stop people wanting, in theory, you could say, to make money or to even push themselves further, try something new. You know, traders is a different thing, salespeople is a different thing as well. But then also you have the benefit of it. So with Basel III, since the 2008 financial crisis, where the banks were just out of control before then, it keeps the banks in check. It keeps them in check. It allows them to be managed ethically and also responsibly as well, which needed to happen. If you look at 2008, the banks were just giving these mortgages out, particularly in America, like it was candy. They didn't care at all. It was led to obviously the collapse of the housing market in the US. And it was just because there was no rules and regulations around it. You were creating these credit default swaps as well, putting in terrible grade B and C mortgage bonds that were always going to collapse in the end. But it needed to be happen. But yeah, that's my view on it.
I mean, it's interesting. I think that I have two views on it. I think that there's two main different groups of people here. You have retail, which is like individuals like me and you, and I don't know, my family, my mum, like anyone you see, like a normal consumer, right? And then you have the banking sector with billions of dollars who are investing people's savings accounts and using it to make a lot more money, these sorts of things. And I feel like they both have different requirements. And I think that currently I don't believe there's enough regulation with in the retail side of things, in the normal consumers, because as you said, like you yourself started when you were 19, and statistically you're very unlikely to make money with day trading, and a lot of 19-year-olds wouldn't know that, and would just think, oh, there's a way to make a lot of money here. They haven't studied the stock market. Perhaps if there was some sort of course that you needed to take on the stock market before being allowed to do some sort of more risky trades, not just normal stocks, but actual like maybe day trading or those sorts of things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, it exists now. So when it comes to signing up with your broker to trade stocks, they would ask you a series of questions. Now, those questions would be like, what's your annual income? Where are you? What stage of your life are you at? Blah, blah, blah. Then it'll ask you very basic financial questions. Anybody can answer them correctly. And then here you go. You're allowed to go into wherever you want. The thing is, some brokers, they've actually been quite good, in my opinion, on that. Because if you do answer one question wrong, or you say your income's £1,000, but you expect to trade £5,000, they'll say, well, you're not allowed to have this amount of leverage. You're not allowed to trade this derivative, which is good. That's how it should work.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think when it comes to the regulation side, I know you mentioned about crypto earlier. The things with crypto is that at the end of the day, it's not real. I worked in crypto as a crypto broker. It's just not real at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's all based on what people think the value of this random coded asset is. That's why you see so many pump and dump schemes, and people get involved with that. They're signed up for themselves, you know. But on the retail side, I think the regulations that we currently have are fine. I think it's a nice balance between allowing people to actually possibly make some money, whether that's luck or them actually learning as much as they can about the market, between them actually looking after their customers saying, okay, we can't give you that amount of leverage. You're not allowed to trade this derivative. I think that's good. I think we're in a quite nice balance on the retail side. I mean, crypto is a whole different talking point itself. But yeah, that's why I kind of stand on it. I think retail side sound, banking sector is a different realm in itself.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. I think personally, I think there's biases involved with me because I think that the people I've seen in my life, I live with people at uni, and this was pre-regulation where literally anyone could leverage and do options trading, and I literally saw them lose so much money with leveraging and that sort of stuff. And I just think, so to me, and I've always been interested in it, but for me, it's more like long-term stock holds with companies that you believe have value. I mean, the difference, as you were saying there, with crypto and companies, is company actually have value there. They're providing value to the market, so you can there's at least you can attach some sort of, they're making tangible products that are selling, and that, and you can associate some sort of stock price to that value. Whereas with crypto, it is, as you say, but like it's very speculative, and it's difficult to track really. And an example of that is the fact that people like Elon Musk can put out a tweet and make one of them skyrocket. It's that must have been an interesting time working at the crypto traders. Do you think that were people very excited about at the time about crypto and about sort of the money making opportunities around it? What were people's feelings?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, so I worked in Gibraltar as one. So the reason why I actually got hired in the first place, I'd just done private equity, and it just wasn't as fast paced or as competitive as I thought it was going to be. So I realized I wanted to be a broker, need to get in somewhere. I only got hired because it was the start of the bull market where we were expecting crypto to reach the 100,000 mark at the time in pounds worth. Bitcoin was like 40 grand, I'm pretty sure, something like that, maybe a bit less, maybe like 35 grand. So everybody's very much excited to go on the bull market. Shit, that's going to hire loads of sales guys, get it sorted. When I go in there, I was sitting with my senior broker, and he is so into his meme coins. Like this guy's like a kid on Christmas Day. He's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna make so much money." And the thing is with the crypto market is that it's a filtration system. So You have your major exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken. It all gets filtered down. So let's say the money supply into crypto increases. So you then have Bitcoin, Ethereum, the major ones. That gets filtered down all the way down to the meme coins. It's the same thing when it comes to the exchanges. So when the guys go to Binance and whatever, it all gets filtered down to the OTC, so over the counter brokers like we were. So we would always experience the buying cycle last, so that makes sense. But due to the amount of volume that was being traded, with everybody gearing up, ready to for the get up to 100K, we still got a lot of volume. I mean, I remember, I think it was like my second day, we broke our daily revenue like dramatically. We have the best month in the company's history. It was mental. But the thing is, just want to cut, and I'm going a bit of a circle here. When it comes to the crypto brokers, these OTC brokers, they have to hold crypto in their accounts to transact. So we would hold on average about 5 Bitcoin to deal with our daily volume. So the thing is, if the crypto market goes up, obviously the amount we have in our vault goes up as well. So it's almost like, okay, well, we can basically pay for this bloke to be here for 6 months. If Bitcoin hits 100K, we've doubled our holdings already, multimillionaires anyway. So that's also like the kind of thing with it. The reason I left is that it all falls down to regulation as well. So we're under the Gibraltar license. It's very cheap but not very regulated license. They moved to Lithuania, which is funny enough is not as regulated as people think. And I basically asked if I wanted to come with, and I said no. I've just started renting in London. I'm not going to come with you. But crypto. It was a very exciting time. I'm kind of happy I am out of it though, because there is so many shady characters in that. So you have people wanting to sign up daily, no matter what coin they want to trade. Whilst we're doing our KYC, so know your customer checks, like these guys like trying to sign up from some random African country, got a
Yeah.
criminal record, and like just like, oh, it's just like, nah, get me out of here. Like, I can't
Yeah.
deal with these guys. It's so shady. It's just like that. I'm quite happy I left, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. You don't really hear people talking about that often because I remember, like, maybe if you go back, like, near 10 years ago, I feel like with Bitcoin, always the discussion was about how it was just being used for money laundering and it was just being used by just like big gangs to just launder billions of dollars in money. But now you rarely see that discussion being made. I think it's been legitimized by people like Elon Musk. I mean, you've now got Trump making his own coin, like meme coins
Yeah.
and these sorts of things. I think it has been legitimized in a sense. So even though it's still going on, all of this shady stuff, it's almost not being discussed by the people in charge.
Yeah, well, it was Jamie Dimon that said it back in 2016, 2017. He said that big crypto, particularly Bitcoin, is just used for sex traffickers and money launderers, which at the time it was. But the argument's sake was that Bitcoin, compared to the US dollar, which is the where most fraud in terms of currency happens, Bitcoin is 0.001%. So the argument's always like, well, you're saying that about Bitcoin, what about the US dollar? But then you fast forward, what was it, 9 years now? You have BlackRock with their ETF. You have JP Morgan even themselves have their own crypto coin to help pay when it comes to the customer side of things. Such a changed landscape environment from all those years ago. It's still very heavily underregulated. You have the FCA who hate crypto, which also links back to the whole regulation side of things. But the FCA just hate it. They won't sign up any Bitcoin brokerage in the UK. The minimum fee to sign up is 5 million. If you're a medium or small size one, you don't have to spend 5 million to pay for legal fees, do you? So they all go outside, and that's another problem as well. The whole UK investment environment in general. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Me personally, when it comes to crypto, I'm not as much as a believer in it anymore as I thought I was. And the reason for that is that I've really just realized that two or three massive whales could just turn around and just could dump Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Nobody be able to handle the liquidity fallout of that. We've seen it. Bitcoin's gone from what was it, 100K like a month ago to 90 grand, keeps trading up and down, up and down. I'm not much of a believer anymore, but if you want to make a quick buck, all good for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I just really don't like the idea of an asset that doesn't have inherent value tied to it on something. Because I always feel like when I look for companies to invest in, it's just believing that they have and provide or will provide value to the market is so key to me, and I just don't see crypto's value. Although I've been saying that for years, and it continuously goes up. So, but the problem is like that's because I feel like people going back to this idea of just people want to make money quickly, and it's seen as this sort of get rich quick. And all going into these people like the 19-year-olds that will invest all of their savings into crypto and lose a lot of money. A lot of the money they're losing a lot of money and paying people to get rich. I feel like it's one of those things again where perhaps the wealth inequality, a lot of people are gaining money, but I'd say majority of them end up losing it. Let's get into the UK because you mentioned a little bit. We've talked about UK regulation and regulation stunting growth. We have Rachel Reeves now as the Chancellor. What are your feelings towards her? I mean, I saw a talk she gave the other day about a few ideas. One of them for me, well, she talks about the runway, the third runway Heathrow, and another interesting one, which I'd like to discuss with you, is the idea of trying to turn Oxford and Cambridge into the UK Silicon Valley. You yourself are from Cambridge. Do you think that that idea of hers is a positive thing and would cause a benefit in terms of like UK growth and significant change to the UK? Do you think it would be useful?
It's a great question. I think one thing that people haven't realized yet with this whole Silicon Valley idea, Rachel Reeves never came up with it. It was the Conservatives back in 2015. They came up with the idea of a UK Silicon Valley. The reason for that is that they looked at India, and India's one of the fastest growing emerging markets globally, and they had 100 unicorns within the space of a few years. India's incredibly rich economic environment now. So Hunt and the Conservatives looked at creating this thing. Now, the reason why they wanted to create it is that you need to look at the UK investment environment. So give a quick history lesson here. So there's three major exchanges that people need to know about. So you have the London Stock Exchange, the Nasdaq, so the US Tech Exchange, and the New York Stock Exchange as well. Now, the UK have really suffered in the past, I want to say decade, with a lack of IPOs. Now, that's when a private company lists and becomes public so people can buy shares in it. Now, we have fallen behind dramatically from that. The reason for that is that our investment environment, since Brexit in particular, has been very poor because we don't have enough foreign investment coming into the UK. Now, one thing that the NASDAQ does really well is the tech one. When you list on the NASDAQ, you have so much publicity and marketing available that people just pump all the money they want into it. If you look at Arm, it was a company based in Cambridge. They're UK born and bred. Last year, they turned down the LSE because they knew they wouldn't get the investment or get the marketing. So they went to listen on the NASDAQ. And that's the whole problem in the UK environment. We're just not appealing whatsoever. The London Stock Exchange is really just, it's not it. And it's going to take a few years for it to recover.
Why is it not appealing to companies looking to list an IPO?
Yeah, so well, at the end of the day, it's investment. So the UK, after 2008, we relied so heavily on foreign investment. So since Brexit, that's decreased by 25%. UK businesses in general have basically returned really bad returns as well since listing as well. We have the most amount of public companies delisting globally. It's just a very poor economic outlook. You have to look at the wider UK economy. We have cost of living crisis, energy crisis, interest rates and inflation is still very high. We have one of the highest income tax globally, and that means there's money out of people's pockets. And at the end of the day, these companies listed, their revenue is generated by consumers, by customers. If the UK environment doesn't have enough people spending their money, at the end of the day, they're not going to get any revenue, are they? So that's one sided thing. I mean, with Reeves and the Silicon Valley idea, I mean, it's basically an arc that she wants to create between Oxford and Cambridge with the railroads, etc. And the town in the middle of that is Milton Keynes. So that was basically created in the 1960s as a London overflow with the baby boomers from World War II. And that whole town was created just to basically bring investment. That was all it was. It is huge potential at the end of the day, but these spin outs happening out of the universities, they're not really AI and tech companies that are taking the world by storm. They're mainly biotech firms. Now, biotech firms are a different investment realm in itself because you have to be a very niche investor to get into that. And now, biotech firms have really struggled since the Theranos case in 2014 with Elizabeth Holmes with fraud. So they haven't got the love they deserve. But normally, these spin outs, as soon as they spin out of these universities, foreign investors do snap them up. It's the only real thing the foreign investment we are getting at the moment. So they go very quickly. Now, look, she believes that it's going to add like I think it was 80 billion in 10 years. It's not enough with our fiscal deficit really to add that to the economy. And when you look at Silicon Valley, last point on this, when you look at Silicon Valley, this place is driven by a concentration of capital, talent, and infrastructure. In Silicon Valley alone, VC's funds they raise 5 times more than London, and London capital wise, and London's the finance capital of the world. This is one place in America generates 5 times more than that just from venture capital funds. So it's a very bold idea that's not going to work because we need to fix our investment outlook first before we tackle this new Silicon Valley for the UK. That's my stance on it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, in terms of my personal views, I like the Silicon Valley idea mainly because of, I mean, you talked about those 3 points, like infrastructure, talent, and investment. I think that the talent side of it needs to be utilized more. In terms of like global universities, like we do have two of the best universities in the world, Oxford and Cambridge. And I think that having so many of those students there who are going through university, are such bright minds, and that they have a home there in essence, they have their friends there. When they graduate, if you have a lot of companies around them who are in engineering, in biotech, all of these companies, I think it's a great place to take that talent and make things that people aren't thinking of. Like one of my friends, actually, he was on one of the previous podcast episodes. Johan, he goes to Oxford and he's graduating soon, and he's just got a job in Oxford working at an engineering company when he finishes. And they do. There is a significant amount of not just biotech companies but engineering companies as well. That his company that he's going to go work at, working on parts for like NASA, and also working on there was that space probe that went the closest to the sun out of any space probe. That company in Oxford worked on a lot of electrical parts for that. So there is a lot of opportunity in Oxford for engineering, especially. And I am biased because I am an engineer, but I do think that we need to see more engineering talent and more companies working on engineering in the UK. The thing is, what I've always felt about the UK economy is we are never ever going to be able to compete with manufacturing or things like compared to like China or India or America, where they have a much larger population. It's very, very difficult for us to compete in manufacturing. So I think seeing working on things like biotech or engineering where we can design products and then get them manufactured elsewhere, I think is a better route for us to go, and kind of like improving, or AI as well. Any technologies that doesn't require manufacturing but requires brain power, I think is the route that UK should go down, because I don't believe that we can continue to stay competitive if we don't go down this like brain sort of route.
I know exactly where you're coming from. I mean, it's before 2008, we were the second largest economy in terms of productivity, only behind the US. Here's the thing also about the UK economy as well. If you take away London and you take away the east of England, so the UK has been heavily reliant on the finance sector for income tax, okay? And you take away the east of England, where most of farming and the ports as well with Felixstowe. If you take away both those places, we go from the seventh largest economy globally to the 44th, okay? That's a third world economy. And that is just absolutely outrageous, in my opinion. Take away those two areas, it's just the country is just absolutely shocking. The reason for that is that we're going from the second most productive nation pre 2008 to we're even behind France now. The reason for that is that we import so many um, workers from outside the UK to do low skilled, low paid jobs that don't produce anything. We see it in labour side of the market, and we see it particularly in nursing and the NHS, but that's a whole different story. So since 2008, we are 25% as a country, we're 25% worse off. So if you picture a graph, 2008 to 2025, if the financial crash didn't happen, we will be like that. It'll be a very nice outlook. With the US, they've recovered since that very well because they managed their employment very well. With the UK, we've gone, so 2008 there, we've gone like that, we've gone like that, and we've gone a bit like that. So we've been all over the place. And it's all down to productivity. We just don't produce enough. The workers that we do bring over to the UK are just not skilled in the jobs we need, like engineering, for example, nursing as well. It's just a very poor outlook in terms of what the UK needs to happen. But I do totally agree with you. If we're going to go down this route, we need to bring in workers that know exactly what they're doing, are going to get paid well. They're going to do very high skilled, high quality jobs that's going to produce something. And that is what happened in engineering. So yeah, that's my view, and I do agree with you.
Yeah. Do you? So I'm just thinking about how I think growth as an idea to me is difficult because I think that, as you mentioned, if you remove London and the east of England, a lot of we would move down in terms of the rankings. Now, this to me says that if as a country our growth increases, then 90% of the population is going to be unaffected by that growth because how if that money is being made in very pinpointed places and it's not being distributed and most people's lives won't improve in a way. Do you think there's a way that we could make growth fair and less wealth inequality in the UK in this kind of path moving forward where we're trying to aim for growth?
That's a great question. It's an ethical standpoint that you need to take on that. Look, it is capitalism at the end of the day. There's winners and there's losers. Um, you know, income inequality, all that side, it's been there since the dawn of time, and it's not going to run away. It's not going to change as much as people go out and protest in London about it. I mean, there's a very famous trader, Gary Stevens, who was a Citibank trader, who's now gone and done podcasts and everything. He's on Piers Morgan last night talking about. So he's not as good a trader as people say he is, but it is something that's quite obvious. You know, I'm living in London. I live next to Canary Wharf. I'm seeing all these massive skyscrapers, guys driving Lamborghinis around. I then go to Middlesbrough in a week's time to go racing, and council houses are falling down. It's the thing is that if you are going to bring this growth to the UK, it needs to be evenly distributed. The North has lacked infrastructure and funding for decades now. When you had all the industrial sites closing down due to environmental stuff, everything like that, it leaves a hole in that economy, in that local economy. And if it doesn't get filled up, then it just dies. Look at Middlesbrough, had a massive port, it was a booming economy back in the 80s and 90s, and now it's a ghost town. It's very sad to see. Stoke-on-Trent, it's a great example. If you don't distribute the growth evenly, it just leads to more inequality, in my opinion. But I definitely sit on the right-hand side of the political spectrum. Capitalism has always been there. There are winners and there's losers. I feel that if you want to be a winner, you got to work your ass off to get there and try and end up on the right side. But yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I think there is a lot of idea from. I think my view has changed a lot over the years because I mean I grew up in South East London in like Kent, and I think that most people around me were quite right wing. I mean, we were all quite lucky in the sense that like growing up in London in a well off area. I mean, it's you're kind of in a little bubble. And then I'd say I went to uni up north, like I went to Sheffield, I'm now living in Huddersfield for like an internship. And you see a different side to the UK and you see a lot of resentment. You meet a lot of people and you see a lot of resentment towards the South and the way and I think it is because of that feeling that they've almost been shafted in a way that
Oh, they have been shafted. Oh,
like a
massive.
lack of funding, a lack of investment, and lack of wealth distribution in a way. But then, yeah, I think I find it hard just from someone that studies engineering. Like I'm always solution based, but I find it hard to think of something to solve this problem because if you invest places where we'd have infrastructure like Oxford, Cambridge, London, it's easy to keep building there. The infrastructure's there. We keep building, and you can see significant growth and improvements. Whereas places where obviously you're starting near the bottom in terms of infrastructure, you're going to have to spend a lot more money and wait a lot longer for returns, which is goes against what like when I studied economics, it goes against the core thing you're going for. I mean, you're trying to get growth, you're trying to do all these things, and if you said to someone, "Oh, we can invest in this place and get good growth in like 3 years, or we can do here maybe 15, 20 years," obviously people are going to go to that short term. Yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, my hope is that the reason why I like the Oxford Cambridge idea is because if you invest in those places, hopefully, as you said with Milton Keynes, it will slowly expand outwards. I think we need to, even though I do love London and investment for London is good in the sense that like, it benefits me because I live there, but I do think it needs to be elsewhere as well. Like if you go Oxford, Cambridge expand that, and it slowly expands outwards. That's always the hope that.
The problem with that is that we just don't have enough money at the end of the day. So with the recent budget, I mean, picture a ceiling. So you have the income from the public sector, so for the public sector, so all of our taxes, business tax, and everything. Then you have the borrowing that she's taken on. So you're picturing a ceiling. She's about to hit her fiscal ceiling. So if she hits that, that means she has to increase taxes and then also stop the investments that she wants to happen. Now, if that happens, it puts Silicon Valley on hold. It's very likely to happen, unfortunately. It puts Silicon Valley on hold. It stops, I think it's Manchester. I think that's the place they're targeting first as well, with this whole new northern development they want to do. But we're just so in debt and we don't have enough income from taxes coming in at the moment that it's just a very bleak outlook. And I feel it's going to keep getting worse, unfortunately. I do feel the north is, as you mentioned, is very, distant to the south in terms of what we have here. But it's just the economy at the end of the day. It's Labour's policies as well that just aren't going to work. Uh, yeah, it's a bad outlook, but hopefully one day it does change. I hope so.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a sense of pessimism, not just from you, but in terms of the whole country, in terms of politics and especially economics right now. Um, Hopefully, we can see an improvement in that sort of sense of optimism as the years come forward. I wanted to talk to you about America a little bit and what your thoughts are on Trump and what's going on with Ukraine and Putin at the moment. So I think the stuff going on with Putin, Zelensky, and Trump at the moment does fascinate me because it's almost everyone in the West has been very pro Ukraine for a long time, and now Trump has almost come in and saying these, well, basically calling Zelensky a dictator
Mm.
and saying that he basically started the war with Russia. Why do you think that Trump is saying this about Zelensky?
It's a fantastic question. I mean, I think you need to look back on Trump's whole path to the election and getting elected. Look, at the end of the day, as funny as it sounds, Trump's not a Republican. He's a lifelong Democrat. It's the same for Musk. It's the same for Joe Rogan. These guys are lifelong Democrats that just don't like the system anymore. Trump's really not as right wing as people think. And I admire Trump in the sense that he's done exactly what he said he would do. He's implementing the tariffs, he's stopping immigration, he's stopping fentanyl, and he said he would get the war done. He didn't do it exactly on the first day. And look, the reason why Trump's calling Zelensky a dictator, it all stimulates from Zelensky not doing enough to stop the war. And the US, particularly the Biden-Harris administration, being a counterparty in that. The UK has given Ukraine 100 billion. I think it got announced last week or 2 weeks ago. The Americans have given hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And there's rumors circulating that Zelensky and his guys have backpocketed it. I'm not going to make a stance on that. I think war is terrible, no matter which side is dying or who's dying on that side of things. But he's calling Zelensky a dictator because at the end of the day, there has been opportunity for the Ukrainian people to vote and decide on if they want him to stay in power or not. Now, look, it's during a war. We didn't have elections during World War II. It was right after. But at the end of the day, Trump and Zelensky are clashing heads because Zelensky had the opportunity to stop the war, basically give up part of Ukraine to the Russians to stop it, which is not good in itself. But if that's what stops the war, it'll stop the war. But with Trump going behind his back and talking to Putin, in my opinion, it's not good because Zelensky should be involved in it. But I think it's democratical way of allowing the war to come to an end quickly, no matter how much territory Ukraine loses. At the end of the day, I mean, Ukraine have done incredibly well in the war. Like they've been underfunded, well, before us in the US got involved, but that's a different story in itself. Been underfunded military-wise, basically had no military whatsoever, and they've done bloody well. At the end of the day, this war's at stalemate, and Russia will eventually win, no matter how many billions we give Ukraine. And it needs to come to an end quickly, because at the end of the day, if Russia get pissed off, they're going to go next door, could be Poland, could be wherever, and NATO will get involved. So it needs to be a very quick end to this war, and I think Trump can do that. And if Zelensky doesn't like it, well, he should have stopped it earlier. But there you go, that's my view on it.
I think that Trump. I think that Trump is a businessman. At the end of the day,
Yes.
he he knows how to make a deal and get what he wants. And I think that this particular tactic, or this is what I believe is the tactic at play here. So Trump is obviously, America's been providing a lot of support to Zelensky in Ukraine for many years to do with this war. And Trump has come in and he's like, why are we giving away this money? He doesn't want to give this money away. And he sees, okay, what does Ukraine have? Ukraine has a lot of natural resources that America could benefit from. So Trump, in essence, here wants to stop giving money to Ukraine and get the natural resources in some sort of deal. So Trump goes, this is before he called Zelensky a dictator. Trump goes to Zelensky, proposes some sort of deal to get these natural resources, and then Zelensky declines. I mean, he's asking for, I think, over like 50% of the country's natural resources. Like, if the war did end, you're just bankrupting the economy. So obviously, Zelensky says no. And then Trump's like, all right, well, he's gonna start to make Zelensky panic. He's obviously using these skills as a businessman. He's gonna make Zelensky panic. He's gonna act as though his support is waning. He's going to talk to Putin behind his back. He's going to call Zelensky a dictator. And in my mind, it's all part of this tactic from Trump to get the best deal for Trump himself. He wants the most minerals and he wants to get it done quickly and stop giving money away, in essence. So yeah, I think it's all part of a tactic to get this done. And I think it's working in the sense that Zelensky is now, because of all the things he's been called, maybe he will back down sooner. I think that Zelensky shouldn't back down sooner. I think that the EU, if anything, this whole situation with Trump calling Zelensky a dictator, I think would make Europe support Zelensky more. I think that at least you've seen it in the news, where the way that Trump is acting towards Zelensky, I think it's rallied EU leaders. I mean, you have an emergency summit, you have leaders coming out and saying he's not a dictator and it's not true. I think it's interesting. I think it's the one topic that's actually united the EU. I think if I was Zelensky, I would try and stay strong for some time. And if he is looking for a deal, maybe look for a better one with the knowledge that the EU will support him more so now than they did before.
Yeah, I know 100% where you're coming from. And I mean, even though I said, Zelensky could have ended the war earlier, I do stand with you. Like, what's happening in Ukraine is terrible. What's happening in Israel and in Palestine is terrible as well. Um, but I do agree with you. He should stand firm and do himself, at the end of the day. I mean, when it comes to Europe, and the support they've had for Ukraine has been immense, and I do agree it has united all of the European nations at the end of the day. There's been so much terrible stuff happening in Europe. I mean, the amount of terrorist attacks we had alone this year is outrageous.
Mm.
But I totally agree. I mean, Zelensky can come up with a deal that has benefited both parties. I think it's great. But it also links to what you said about Trump being a negotiator and doing something for his own benefit. He's done the same thing when it comes to the tariffs. If you look at the tariffs that he's imposed mainly on Canada and Mexico, Canada and Mexico are the two largest importers and exporters for the US, hundreds of billions of dollars a year. But the two things they import and export is also illegal immigrants and fentanyl. And Trump obviously said in his election campaign that he wanted to stop that as quickly as possible. So these tariffs, even though people think that they're, a way to annoy and stop Mexico and Canada doing business with America, it's not. It's a proxy. It's a proxy to allow Trump to do what he wants to do. He's implemented these tariffs so that, and he said this to both prime ministers of Canada and Mexico, that we will lift these tariffs only if you stop the supply of fentanyl into my country and stop illegal immigrants coming in. What happens? 24 hours later, Mexico complies straight away and the tariffs get lifted. Canada's a different story because there's two ends of the political spectrum with Justin Trudeau and Trump. But all of a sudden, after one meeting, Canada's running with a tail in between their legs because they can't compete with him. It's just a way for him to do business and get it done at the end of the day. And I personally, America is the largest economy globally. We rely so heavily on it. And as I said earlier, I think Trump is a good thing for the world. But if he didn't implement those tariffs, America would still be probably in the same place, in my opinion. But yeah, that's my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I mean, so many things to dissect. I don't know where to start, but
Yeah, sorry, it's been for a little
I
bit.
think, yeah, I don't know. I think that even though Trump is getting what he wants, and I do believe that he is a very talented businessman and negotiator, and very smart with the things that he wants in the way he gets things. I don't believe it has. If we're looking at a net overall positive effect, negative effect, I still believe that Donald Trump has an overall net negative effect on society. I mean, it goes back to this sort of. I mean, we talked about wealth equality and distribution through society and sort of this idea of overall positive change. Even if America sees 5% growth from Trump's actions, the effect that he has had on truth, political polarization, on the division of people, I think just from that societal perspective, is going to have such negative effects compared to the marginal 5% GDP growth. I think it's I think the problems of the person are bigger than the actual economic issues in this sense.
You make a great point. I mean, just from that statement, I think you and I both have two different views on Trump. I mean, where I stand with him is that for me, for example, when it comes to politics, I want people to do stuff they're going to do. So no matter if it's positive or negative, you say in your campaign you're going to do something, you do it, and it works out. If it doesn't work out, I'm all for it. You look at Labour; they said they were going to do stuff and completely 360'd it and haven't done it at all. So with Trump, if you take the inequality, the argument for that is that he is creating a sovereign wealth fund for the US and cutting people's taxes. Now, when it comes to cutting taxes, you know, in theory, more money in people's pockets to go and spend in the economy. Now, the US have a higher income middle class uh, people than the UK. That makes up 70% of their GDP. We're cutting taxes. I think that's better for equality, personally. I also think when it comes to his, I mean, it's also the fiscal policy as well, to be honest with you. The Americans have spent so much money. They're spending up to $2 trillion. They need to make necessary cuts as well. I think it goes to the national, what's the word? The national personality from the Biden-Harris administration to the Trump administration. Now, Trump is cutting out all these governmental jobs. He's cutting all the DEI programs out, and he's basically putting in place Elon Musk's Doge, which is a different story in itself, to manage this. Now, in my opinion, I think that's a good thing because it tracks government spending, it cuts out all the unnecessary crap that you don't need in it. And I think personally, even though he's a polarizing character, I actually think it would lead to better equality for the American people, pay less taxes, have more opportunity when it comes to the wealth side of things. And also, the thing is, the Americans don't need to create any more jobs because their job market's been absolutely booming. So, you know, that's why it's done it. I think he personally is a good side for it, but, you know, I don't know what you think on that stand.
Yeah, obviously, different perspectives and everything. I think, I mean, just from a personal perspective, I've always liked center left or even center right. I don't really mind, but center politicians because I think that uniting people is more important than dividing for to reach your goals. I mean, like a good example for me is Tony Blair. I feel like when he came into politics and the country was very positive. He was a very uniting figure, both on the left and the right. And because he's towards the center, I think people can get behind him, whatever side of the political spectrum, and it provides a sense of optimism. Whereas I think Trump, because he's so far on the spectrum, and I know you mentioned about like a long-time Democrat, now Republican. I think even whatever you want to call him, I feel like he's not on the center. I don't think you can call him a center character. I do think that division he's going to cause does hurt a country overall. I think, and yeah, well, I mean, we'll see the long term effects. At the moment, it's hard to say. I mean, we're in the first year, so I might be eating my words. We might see unification
Yeah.
and everything. We don't know. Yeah, I think I suppose we'll just have to wait and see if the country can be united and if the things that he does do end up succeeding in terms of long term effects, then I think you'll have a more positive feeling towards him, even from the people that didn't necessarily support him. So we're coming towards an end, but I want to talk a little bit about what your hopes are for the next few years. Like, do you have any sort of things you're looking to achieve or career aspirations or just it can be anything you're sort of like what you're
Yeah.
hoping for from life?
Um, I think, I mean, career-wise, I mean, I've taken quite a long road to get into finance. I mean, but when it comes to the finance world, if you want to climb the ladder, you need qualifications. So you need like CISI, CFA. So for me, it's all about getting those qualifications as quickly as possible. And then, a goal of mine is to work sales side at a massive investment bank or a hedge fund. I think that's the end term goal for me. But like at the moment, I've gone through such a big change over the past 4 years. I've gone from playing cricket, for example, to a very high level. Now I race go-karts up and down the country. So for me, I'm still very brand new to it. I've been doing it for 4 years now. It's not your typical turn up and rent go-kart. It's a go-kart that goes 120 miles an hour, so you do have to hold on sometimes. Yeah, for me, it's on that side of my personal life is getting better at that. I want to start getting podiums, start hopefully winning some races at some point. But it's a load of hard work. I mean, when you work in such long hours that we do, there's very little time to go to the gym or to go practicing. So it's trying to like get better time management. But like personal side, I want to get better at that. But career side, I mean, the thing is, it's such a in the finance world, it's such a big bubble. It's not as easy changing jobs as people think. There's not many people hiring at the moment, and that's due to the economy. But if you get these qualifications and you do very well the job that you're at currently, it's pretty hard for people to say no to you when you come knocking at the door. So that's what I kind of want to do. I think where I currently am at the moment, I probably see myself there for another year. And then when I get the qualifications, making that next step up in my career. It's basically keep making the steps and keep making more money. So that's why.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I feel the same way where, like, in a job market that's difficult, like the UK or like finance or engineering, I am in the same boat where you're just trying to improve those skills and make it so it's not like people that are not unsure if they want you, like, they actually want you desperately over other people because you have so much to offer. I think
Mm.
that is always the key thing. But yeah, thanks so much for
Oh,
coming on the
been a pleasure.
podcast. It's been great.